So our 11:05 order of business is Wyoming Arts Alliance. Andrew Snyder is here to, I have my
Oh, yeah. Oops.
microphone on. Okay. So Andrew Snyder is here with Wyoming Arts Alliance, and he'll give us an update on what they're up to, and we'll have time for questions at the end.
Well, thank you, Chairwoman Newsom and committee members. It's great to be with you all today here in my hometown of Casper. And to be with you again, I'll just remind you, we met last June in Evanston. And so the presentation that I'm going to roll through today is really just following up on the economic impact numbers that we shared a year ago now, and answer some of the really fine questions that you all put to us at that point. And then, as you know, this is an interim topic that was assigned by Management Council, so we wanted to give you an update on the work that we're doing between now and the next session as well. And if you all would like to have us back in October, we'll have some more to talk about. So there's the preview to get you hanging on the edge of your seats. As a reminder, and for those, oh yes, absolutely. Sorry, I'm kind of a soft talker, so I got to get in on the microphone here. For those who are not familiar with the Wyoming Arts Alliance, we're a 40-year-old service organization with the mission to advance a creative and culturally vibrant state. We are a member-supported 501c3. In the last few years, our membership has grown to reach every county, and our supporter list has grown to over 6,000 individuals representing every county and legislative district. We are not the Wyoming Arts Council, whose executive director, Rachel Clifton, is here with us today. The Wyoming Arts Council, of course, is an office of the State Department of Parks and Cultural Resources, and we appreciate the opportunity to highlight the distinction for the public today. So for over 40 years, WY has worked with our members and allies to improve the climate for the arts and culture in Wyoming. And so today is a time when new national research is showing that there are really promising signs for the arts and culture, that the state creative economy is beginning to grow, especially after the disruptions of 2022. So I wanted to share some insights into the research and talk a little bit about development efforts that are enabling WYA and our statewide partners to do the work that we do. Of course, as you all know, as legislators responsible for our cultural resources, Wyoming is rich in history, culture, and natural beauty, and that our community is built on the shared values of hard work, freedom, resilience, and innovation. And these show up all the time in our creative communities as well. I myself am a fifth-generation Wyomingite, and I always think it's interesting that the homesteading generation here gave birth to the ag generation, which gave birth to the engineer and entrepreneur generation, which gave birth to the arts generation, which gave birth to me, the arts advocate, I guess. And yesterday, I have to brag on my cousin, my family welcomed the newest addition here in Casper at the hospital. So congratulations to my cousin Gabby, and welcome to the family, her beautiful daughter, Mary Ann, which is a family name. So today we face new challenges and opportunities that are quite different from 5 generations ago. And as we look towards the future and what kind of a state we're going to leave for Mary Ann's generation, these challenges require great commitment. But fortunately, we have been given an incredible start. From the Native American tribes to the pioneers, homesteaders, and ranchers, our state has a legacy of creativity that drives our adaptability. We've overcome the harsh climate, we've overcome economic shifts in the past, and we've maintained our unique cultural identity throughout all of that. And again, it ties back to those community values driven on innovation and the deep connection to the land that inspires our creativity. So today, we talk about the creative economy, a word that didn't exist 5 generations ago when my family arrived in Wyoming. And so I wanted to just define that. So in 2001, An economist named John Hawkins published the book called The Creative Economy and offered the first definition of what the creative economy is. And he said it's comprised of the following key creative activities. Again, this is 2001: advertising, architecture, art, crafts, design, fashion, film, television and radio, and video games. So since then, other economists have subsequently taken a broader view of what the creative economy is, to include any workers who deploy any kind of creative activity or creative insight in order to succeed at their jobs. But despite that, Hawkins' definition still stands, I think, describing the different subsectors among the activities. And so the key thing when we talk about creative economy is to think about activities which have their basis or their origin in individual creativity and skill and talent, and which have a potential for wealth and job creation through the generation and the exploitation of intellectual property. So when we say creative economy, we include arts, we include culture, we include all of those sectors. And it's a broadest reference to this phenomenon of creativity influencing the size, the growth rate, and the general dynamics of the state's economy. How do we measure this? And these were really the heart of your questions last year. So I wanted to talk about the data that we have available. So the data shows us sort of quantitative evidence of arts and culture's impact on the broader economy. And these include things like audience numbers, economic contributions, different educational outcomes. And I think it's important to note that not all of the impacts are monetary. Sometimes we look at health impacts, community cohesion impacts. So when we're measuring and evaluating the monetary impact, we have to keep in mind that there are two groups, and one is the core of the industries, the actual artists, those folks who are applying creativity, and then there's the support. So in these numbers I give you, it's the big total picture number, but we do have the ability to dig into that. A handout that you guys can take a look at another time kind of dives into the 4 different sources of data that we use to derive this information. But just real quickly, we do our own research here amongst the nonprofits and the businesses. We use national data from the Bureau for Economic Analysis. And then we use a really great tool that's called CV Suite that takes that data and gives us an index based on location. And so you all can see the sort of different levels of data that goes into this research. And so here in Wyoming, where the arts are publicly funded in order to ensure that there's cultural enrichment and community engagement and the preservation of our creative heritage for all of our citizens, the big stats that we talk about from Bureau of Economic Analysis is now 11,876 jobs. These are 2022 numbers, which is an increase over 2021. That comprises 4.1% of the state's workforce. So if you want to think of it in terms of 1 in 25 jobs is in the creative economy, either in that direct group or in the larger support group. What they call the Arts and Culture Production Satellite Account accounted for 4.3% of the state's compensation, which is an indicator that jobs in the creative economy pay more on a wage basis than the average jobs or the number of jobs. And we're going to dig in later this year to get you some more details about what that actually looks like. In terms of value added from 2021 to 2022, there was an increase in value add from 1.2 billion to 1.3 billion. So that's the initial impact of the dollars moving around in the creative economy. And further analysis would show us how those dollars then recirculate in the community. I'm going to talk a little later about that work. One other fun fact to bring up is that in addition, our data shows us that cultural tourists stay longer in a location and come to Wyoming and spend more, at least 36% more at the destinations around the state than any other kind of travelers. and this phenomenon is not just a national phenomenon, it's a Wyoming phenomenon as well. So there's the data, right? And we shared those numbers with you last year. The data alone
Andrew,
doesn't.
can I interrupt you for just a second?
Of course.
Representative Western has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Andrew, I really appreciate you taking some time to come and chat with us and run us through some of these numbers. So you said it's about 11,000 jobs in Wyoming connected to the arts, which consists of roughly 4% of the workforce. Can you do a breakdown of the income in those jobs? I mean, I know, for example, if we look at graduates in engineering and all these kind of things, there's a lot of data about how much the average they earn coming out of college, 5 years out, 10 years out, all that kind of stuff. So could you break down kind of the of those 11,000, what's the mean wage, any of those kind of numbers,
Andrew?
if possible?
Thank you, Chairwoman. And we did not plan this in advance, but that's the perfect setup. So what WIA is doing right now, we've partnered at UW with the Center for Business and Economic Analysis to take these numbers and do a county by county assessment and to dive into those. So while I do have a figure of what that median is, I don't have the range, the full data set to show you. And I didn't bring those numbers today anyways. I wasn't anticipating getting totally into the weeds on that. But by October, we'll have those numbers at your next meeting to share with you. One of the places in the state that you all might be interested to look at some of this is a project of the Community College Commissions called SLEDS, which is the Student Longitudinal EDS. And that actually shows you from right out of school into the workforce. It's got some good news in terms of retaining our young people, but most of those young people are leaving and applying their creativity elsewhere. So we hope that by doing this work of research and development in the creative economy, we can start to benchmark against other states where we know our young people are leaving for and make the same kinds of reinvestments in quality of life and economic opportunities, diverse economic opportunities to retain them here and make us competitive in that way. Thank you for the question. I just have a little bit longer and then I promise we can break for lunch. How's that? So, that was a perfect tee up to talk about the brain drain and some of the issues that we face in Wyoming and looking ahead to Mary Ann's future and knowing that why people are leaving our state and what's attracting them to the other states is that we're being out invested in that prosperity and those creative opportunities. So it's kind of Wyoming's moment of choice. From my point of view and our members' view, our economy is still heavily reliant on a small handful of industries. And we have a choice to diversify our economy by investing in research and development for the creative sector with the goal of establishing new job opportunities, greater economic resilience, and a thriving cultural scene that attracts and retains those folks here in Wyoming and their businesses. Just to briefly make the case for that, we know that the arts and culture and the creative economy stimulates local economies, attracts tourists. I just gave you those stats. We know from those trends going up that the investments we're starting to make are working and that we should continue to be bullish and invest. I wanted to highlight, since we met last June, WIA has embarked on a project called the Data Roundup. This work will continue through the end of 2025, when we will be able to create an actual creative economy report that includes strategic plans from different state agencies, from different communities around the state and different arts and culture stakeholders. Because despite the fact that our investments are showing great promise and the trends are looking good, we had a panel during the legislative session at the Capitol and identified wages, access to healthcare, workforce turnover, folks aging out of the workforce, general brain drain, and lagging infrastructure as the most urgent barriers facing our creative communities. So what WIA is doing now, in addition to partnering with the Center for Business Economic Analysis to do a impact study and really dig into these numbers that I shared earlier. We've also just received funding from the Community Foundation to go to every county and do a round of listening sessions. So this work in 2024 and 2025 builds on focus groups and listening sessions that were last done in 2016, almost a decade ago, and with work that was started by State Parks and Cultural Resources Director Millward Simpson around 2011, which was the first time that the state really looked at their creative economy reinvestment and at the what I would call the organizational health of 2 or 3 generations of arts and culture infrastructure that's been built in the state. So while the trends look good, our arts and culture infrastructure is, some of it's aging. Today, we're going to go look at, rather than bore you further with case studies and how it all works, we're just going to go look at a really exciting success story, which is Art 321, part of downtown Casper's vibrant creative scene, and give you a feel for how these kinds of investments can shape a community and what that looks like. And it's an auspicious occasion because Art 321 is an outgrowing of the Casper Artists Guild, and this is their 100th anniversary. So it's a really great moment to look back at 100 years of Wyoming history and to imagine where we're going to be. Next 2 years is the 250th anniversary of America. Let's start thinking about the future here and making these creative investments just as the generations that came before us did to set us up for success. And I think that's probably the best place that I could possibly leave this for your questions.
Okay. Any questions for Andrew? Madam Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Excuse me, Chair. Yeah, Andrew, I appreciate, again, the data. I've got actually 2 questions. The first one is, where do you think you are in terms of how you've all bounced back from COVID? And what kinds of things have been a success story there? And then my second question is, in terms of collaboration, how do you collaborate like with the Wyoming Arts Council and some of the other arts groups that are around there? And what kinds of things do you guys do to get together and make some things happen around the state?
Andrew?
Thank you. Another handout that we can make available for you at lunch is titled "Almost Everything You Need to Know About the Arts to Be a Legislator in Wyoming." It's a very short sheet. But I think to answer your first question about how are we doing in our post-2020 recovery, we've seen really wise investments. One of the new additions to this year's sheet is the Nelge Center for Creative Excellence, or for Excellence and Creativity in the Arts, which is housed at UW through a gift from Wyoming artist Nelge Blanchin. And I was hoping Beth Venn, the executive director, could be here today to speak with you all, but she is currently revising a grant for the Wyoming Innovation Partnership. And so the investment in entrepreneurship through the Wyoming Innovation Partnership is one investment that it has already impacted more than 100 artists around the state in its first year, and is the kind of investment. In fact, Beth and I just spoke on a panel, a national panel about rural arts and resilience, and her programming was held up as one of the most exciting national examples of how to do this work in rural settings. So that, as well as our colleagues in cultural resources who have done amazing things like an artist in residence at the park and other arts in the parks programs. There's some really exciting developments that I know the Arts Council Board has been thinking about for the future as well. And I don't want to steal any thunder or get ahead of any announcements as that work happens, but there has been additional investment into those strategies. There's been a significant additional investment into the Cultural Trust, and these are just beginning. These are really just the tip of the iceberg of the types of investments that are going to make a huge difference in the lives of Mary Ann and her generation and set them up for success. In terms of our partnership, we have at least a decade of direct partnership with the Arts Council. We speak at least every other week and sometimes more frequently. And amongst the states, I serve as the co-chair of the Western Arts Advocates Network, and I represent Wyoming on the National Creative States Coalition of organizations, state arts service organizations. And there's a lot of envy for the relationship that we have between the private arts nonprofits and the State Arts Council. So it's an incredibly valuable partnership, and thank you for the opportunity to highlight that.
Follow-up?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Just one other one, when you talked a little bit about funding, that's another thing that I've been curious about, particularly with the economy the way it is. I've just wondered if, particularly private donations, are you seeing a decline there with the way things are in the economy, or staying flat, or where are you on that?
Andrew?
Yeah, very prescient question, and you're probably hearing this the most in your local communities. The governor shared numbers last year that for every dollar the state invests in the arts, local communities are investing $17 through local municipal public funding and through private philanthropy. And but we know that on the local level, there's a pinch in that philanthropy, and it's being called into other really important things that our communities need. So when we think about making sure that everyone has access to the transformative value of the arts, it's an opportunity for the state to reinvest further to make sure that there's equitable spread across the state of those kinds of resources. It's a real struggle, and I think there will be some arts nonprofit leaders that you can engage with today at lunch who can talk to you about the difficulties in making their budgets whole and the kind of deferred maintenance that their infrastructure is suffering because of just working 24/7 to keep the lights on. We're fortunate in Wyoming. We didn't get hit necessarily as hard with the pandemic disruptions, but still in performing arts is one area that is still really struggling to get back to where they were just 4 years ago. So it's not been an even recovery across the board. And if we don't make some more strategic resources available for local communities, we're going to see some of them start to fail just as a result of burnout after losing that private philanthropic investments.
Any other questions? Representative Singh.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Schneider, I know that for a lot of independent artists, their work is based off of a commission, on a commission-to-commission basis. Are you aware of any restrictive language in either like state law or municipal code that is restricting government entities from being able to commission independent artists?
Andrew, or would the Arts Council have a comment on that? Or not really? Come on up, Rachel.
Come on in, the water's fine.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair, Representative Singh. Rachel Clifton, the Executive Director of the Wyoming Arts Council. As far as I know, it would probably defer to conflict of interest that LSO, I'm guessing, would probably oversee for elected officials. But, we always encourage people to commission artists, and there's nothing to say you can't commission something and hang it in your house if it's what you love or matches your couch, as the case may be, so.
Does that get to your question?
Madam Chairman, thank you. I guess I would like to help foster an environment in which independent artists are able to commission pieces of work at their own pace and not necessarily rely on the schedule of a bureaucracy, but rather can make deals with people in the community and build each other up that way. And so I'm searching for anything that would restrict that. Not necessarily, I mean, obviously conflicts of interest. We don't want people paying exorbitant amounts of money in a way that could be perceived as corrupt. But I do want to support our local artists, so.
Andrew?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so we see all of the above happening in Wyoming. We see the ability for communities to make municipal investments and to bring private philanthropic dollars through municipal sources to match that. And then we see municipals working with community members to donate art in. So we see both commissioning of public art or art in public spaces, if you want to think of it that way, from that. I don't think we have a terrible problem with bureaucracy on that front. And then we see municipals working with philanthropic investors who pay for those commissions directly to the artists. And then the municipal's role in those cases has to do with, is the site acceptable? Is there landscaping around it? And then what does the maintenance of that look like? So whenever we're dealing with art in the public space or public art events, including music, performance, other things, there's going to be a little bit of red tape to ensure safety, durability, those types of things. And we really encourage communities like the Chairwoman's Community of Cody, which is probably the most recent group to create an advisory commission to kind of deal with murals and public art, to make sure that all of those community safety, content standards and so forth are in place, so that we don't wind up with a giant, sculpture of a hand flipping the bird to a, like some, just to give you some imagination. So I think we're in an environment where all of that's possible. And I don't see regulation that needs to be removed to facilitate that, if I'm picking up on their question the right way.
Any other, or is that?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll save some questions for after this discussion. I don't want
Okay.
to take up too much of the time.
Thank you. Other questions? Rachel, I know we didn't have you on the agenda, but is there anything that you would like to add to what Andrew has said about our creative economy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just add that we definitely support the direction that Andrew and Waya is going with this research and with this work, so that we can continue to support artists and give them the space to create and demonstrate how valuable what they do is to our communities. So we're excited to work alongside Andrew with that. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions from the committee? All right, seeing none, we would entertain public comment. If there's anyone who wants to comment publicly, anybody online? Okay. I guess we'll dispense with that. And I don't know that there was any action asked for at this
Just an
point.
update, ma'am.
Okay, so I don't think we have any directives from the committee. So I guess we will head over to lunch. Andrew will guide us there.
Yep, gladly.
Okay, perfect. So we'll break for lunch until 1 o'clock.